Very often when you're writing a story, or when I'm reading a story, I'll find that the author has some sort of hole in his plot. Now, a hole in a plot can happen a number of different ways. In some cases, the author resolves the problem too easily. So the author says, okay, John really wants to hit the ball. And so he stands up there and the pitcher throws and he swings and hits it. Yay! There's not a problem there. There's nothing to be resolved. There's nothing that was keeping the character from hitting that ball the very first time out. And if you ever watch a good fight scene, you know that the hero has to try at least a couple of different times in order to resolve the problem. You know, he's got to throw a couple of punches, knock a guy down and get his own teeth knocked out, and you know, he's getting strangled, and finally he manages to turn the tide and win the day. So very often we find that characters just don't have to try hard enough. They have to make more than one attempt. And the rule is that for the problem to be substantial, you have to try to resolve it 3 times. The other thing that happens is that sometimes the person tries to resolve a problem and they do it just great, but we have no clue as to why it's a problem in the first place. For example, imagine you've got a character and your character is terrified of snakes, and he's Indiana Jones. And Indiana Jones falls into a temple and suddenly freaks out and goes catatonic when he sees a snake. Well, we've never had it explained to us that this character has this problem. So we need to have motivation for our characters. So every time that I look at a scene, I go, okay, what's the motivation for my character? Why is he acting the way that he does? And B, does he try to resolve it enough times? Does he have something that's blocking him or stopping him? Now, when you're looking at your motivations for your characters, realize that as they try to resolve a problem, they may have what I call simple solutions to a problem, or they may have complex reactions to a problem. For example, imagine that you've got a woman who has her 8-year-old daughter come to her, and the daughter says, "Mommy, today at school my teacher touched me where he wasn't supposed to." A simple reaction would be for the character to rush out of the house and drive down to the school and confront the teacher, yell at him. A complex reaction, though, is where you choose from a list of reactions. What could she possibly do? Well, one woman, confronted with that situation, maybe might want to take a drink of whiskey and think about it. Another one might go load her gun. A third one might call the police. A fourth one might decide to sit down and pray, and so on and so on. A complex reaction occurs when your character does 3 or 4 things. She grabs a whiskey, starts drinking. While she's gulping, she says her prayer. She thinks, I'm going to call the police. And they go, no, that would just give him warning. So she goes and grabs her gun and she gets ready to go down and shoot him. That's a complex reaction. When you have your characters and you think about their motivations, those motivations come into play for complex reactions. So you have to think about what my character might do, what her motivations for being that might be. And it can't be just a simple motivation. There can't just be one motivation for the final action. There may be multiple complex motivations for them doing what they do and why they do it. Maybe, for example, this woman, when she was an 11-year-old girl, she was sexually assaulted. And she has always carried a chip on her shoulder, and the guy who did it got away, and she always vowed that if that kind of thing ever happened again, that nobody was going to get away with it. That becomes her motivation for doing what she does. And so you've got to be really clear on this exercise, and it should be convoluted, it should be complex. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to have you sit down, and in a page or so, I'd like you to look at your character and look at his biggest outer conflict. in other words, the main plot of your story, usually, is going to tell us what your character is facing. I would like you to try to tell me what his motivations are for trying to resolve that problem, and just give me a sense of what it is that he's trying to resolve. But then also look at any fears, phobias, special desires that your character has. Really get into what's the motivations for your character. Why is it that this matters to him? So this is going to be a case where you simply look at your major conflict, and then if you've got a romantic conflict, you can talk about that. If you've got a personal conflict with your character, so that he has his own inner demon that he's trying to excise, then I'd like you to look at that and just go through motivations for your characters and why they do what they do.